Our meditation this morning will be unguided. So have a lovely practice, and I'll see you in 15 minutes. Please gently allow your concentration or your consciousness to become less absorbed as you begin to arise from meditation. We dedicate all of all of the merit from this morning's meditation to world peace. May the phenomena of conflict, aggression, and war soon become completely obsolete in this world. May they be completely foreign notions, phenomena that people have no idea what they mean. May all beings without exception be happy, peaceful, contented, and completely free. Completely fill up your belly and lungs with air, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes and bring your meditation to an end. Welcome back, everyone. You know, throughout my Dharma practice, throughout the years of my Dharma practice, I have always been surprised, and indeed I marvel at the experience in which I realize that there's another layer of onion to be revealed. You know, there have been a couple of times, even arrogantly, that I thought there's no deeper level of insight to be realized or to be revealed. Like I've gotten to the core of the onion and there are no more layers. And I realize, of course, that I was wrong. There is another layer. Maybe there will always be another layer to the onion. And for me, this next layer has to do with suffering and the embracing of suffering. I continue to read through the text by Norman Fisher, When You Greet Me, I Bow. And to refresh everyone's memory, this is a collection of writings of Norman Fisher, a Jewish Zen priest who writes in a prose type style. And When You Greet Me, I Bow is a collection of some of his writings over the last 30 years. And I just wanted to take this moment also. Of late, we have been having a higher number of views on our YouTube channel for these Monday, Friday classes, which is wonderful. Those of you who are joining us remotely for these views, welcome. It's lovely to have you. Please know that Lotus Center here in Silver City, New Mexico has a blog that's called The Daily Dharma. And every day, vignettes, Dharma vignettes are posted on the blog, and one can receive email notifications that a new daily Dharma posting has been made on the blog. So feel free to visit our webpage if you'd like to subscribe to the blog. Our web address, if you don't know it already, is lotuscentersc.org, www.lotuscentersc.org. So here is the latest recently revealed layer of the onion for Jeff. And this is from one of Norman Fisher's writings called Re-Encountering the Psalms, Psalms, as in biblical, the biblical writings. So the first paragraph is a summary of a teaching from, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago called Suffering Opens the Real Path. This first part will be a little bit of a review and a very helpful review. The same idea stated in different words. So Norman Fisher writes, Buddhism begins with suffering and the end of suffering and the path toward the ending of suffering. This is essential and useful for everyone, not just Buddhists. But this approach can easily lead to a grave spiritual error. The notion that suffering is something to be avoided, prevented, escaped, bypassed. I have seen many Western Buddhist students suffer a great deal because of this natural error, thinking and believing they could go beyond or had gone beyond their suffering, only to find that it was there all along, underneath their seeming calmness and insight, and that because they had tried not to see and accept it, they had made it far worse. Wow, very sobering and very illuminating at the same time. Continuing from this section, the Psalms make it clear that suffering is not to be escaped or bypassed, that, much to the contrary, suffering returns again and again, a path in itself, and that through the very suffering and admission of suffering, the letting go into suffering and the calling out from it, mercy and peace can come. This is most poignantly expressed, of course, in the example of Jesus. So here's the third and last paragraph that I'd like to share with you this morning. There is a crucial corollary to this point. Excuse me. There is a crucial corollary to this point. If suffering is a path, then those who suffer are to be honored. Wow. I'll read that again. There is a crucial corollary to this point. If suffering is a path, then those who suffer are to be honored. A key theme in the Psalms, and therefore of Judaism and Christianity, is the nobility of the oppressed and the necessity of justice and righteousness, that the oppressed be cared for and uplifted, and that there ought to be social justice for all. I would invite you to revisit your relationship to and practice of compassion within this context, within the context of honoring those who are suffering. I would respectfully counsel against the view that everyone is suffering, therefore everyone is to be honored for their suffering. That's an absolute truth as far as I'm concerned, that everyone is suffering. But when we take the entire population of all sentient beings in the world, both human and non-human, when we try to take all sentient beings as our objects of honoring or compassion, it can become abstract, I think, and therefore less personal, less intimate, and will therefore move our mind less than our practice would perhaps if we took a smaller subset of the population and focused on them and made them our object of honoring. And it's so funny, I've never used these words, taking sentient beings who are suffering as our object of honoring. So often it's our object of compassion, but this view that is offered by Norman Fisher really turns the practice of compassion on its head, I think, in a good way. So with regard to perhaps choosing a smaller subset, one that resonates strongly for me are elders, are the senior citizens of this world. I have the great privilege of leading a chair yoga class at a senior assisted living facility here in Silver City called Millie's. Those of you locals, I'm sure, know of Millie's Care Center, it's called, and the place lives up to its name indeed. And I lead a chair yoga class over there on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. And as a result of that privilege and my being welcomed into Millie's Care Center, I see the suffering that the elders experience. Some of the, very overt and predictable types of suffering, the failing of the human body, their inability to move as they would like to or as they used to move, just physically move, the practice of locomotion. They can't move like they used to. Almost everybody in there needs canes or walkers or wheelchairs. Those are kind of some of that's a more obvious example of the suffering of elders. Another one is that might not be so obvious for some of us, are the loneliness that elders experience. They have a lot of time on their hands with nothing to do. A lot of them have lost some or all of their ability to cognize, their cognitive capacity. They can't read anymore. They can't understand. Some of them can't understand television programs. Yeah, they're the respite from their suffering for some is provided only through when they have family members visit them, which for most it would seem is fairly infrequent. Elders are to be honored for their suffering, at least in my view. Very powerful example of honoring the suffering of others and making that honoring and the phenomenon of suffering itself part of our path. In the First Noble Truth, Buddha says, first you should know suffering. This is the DNA of that practice as far as I'm concerned. Another example is, they're referred to collectively in the sutras as our enemies. What about honoring the sufferings of our enemies? And here enemies can, it's kind of a catch-all term meant to mean maybe we do have abject patent enemies in our lives. That catch-all term can also refer to people who get on our nerves, right? People who push our buttons, not so much lifelong arch enemies who will fight to the death, maybe just people who push our buttons, people who get on our nerves. That can be maybe some political leaders whose views we don't agree with. Maybe it could be somebody who has wronged us in the past. You guys can fill in the blanks there. But just remember, I would invite you to remember that I would say that there is a very, very high probability that everyone who is an enemy of yours is a victim of trauma. That's an absolute certainty. Everyone who is an air quotes enemy of yours has been subjected to trauma at some point in their life. Almost certainly at some point when they were a child, almost certainly before the age of 7, they experienced a childhood trauma that colored and informed who they became and how they came to view the world and how to engage in the world. If that traumatic event, if somehow miraculously they avoided a childhood trauma that informed who they have become as adults, then without question it happened in a previous life that informed who they are. anyways, I'm digressing a little bit. The point I'd like to make here is that this practice of honoring the suffering of others and the path of suffering that others are treading is a means for us to honor them and completely transform how we view them. Takes them from being an enemy to an object of veneration for their suffering. They're suffering just like we are. And with that commonality comes connection and empathy and all of the other good things that come from all of the other good fruits that can come from spiritual practice in general, and this practice of not running away from our suffering, embracing it, and honoring the sufferings of others. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your practice. Have a beautiful day and a beautiful week. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Jeff.
You're most welcome, Karen. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.